The Ottoman Empire, spanning over 6 centuries and reaching across 3 continents, commanded an immense territory rich in diversity not only in religion, culture, and ethnicity, but also in language. Despite Turkish being the language of the ruling class, the Ottoman Turkish language didn't become the dominant or sole language across its vast territory. This outcome was not incidental, but a product of complex policies, societal structures, and practical challenges. The Ottomans chose a model of governance that accommodated linguistic plurality rather than enforcing a single language, ultimately making Turkish just one language among many in the empire. The common argument that many people put forward on this issue is the Ottoman Empire was very tolerant, so it did not interfere with the language of other nations. However, this issue is not that simple. This video will examine why the Ottomans didn't succeed to spread Turkish as a unifying language and the opportunities and limitations they encountered. One of the most significant reasons behind the lack of a cohesive language policy to spread Turkish was the Millet System, the Ottoman approach to managing its diverse subjects. Under this system, communities were organized based on their religious affiliation rather than ethnicity or language, allowing Armenians, Greeks, Jews, and others to govern their affairs semi-autonomously. Language became a tool for identity within these communities, who often prioritized their languages as symbols of their culture and religion. Since each millet was allowed to use its language in religious services, schools, and legal matters, there was no overarching pressure to adopt Turkish. Consequently, while Turkish remained the language of administration and the Sultan's court, the Millet System fostered linguistic diversity rather than unification. Even within administrative circles, the Turkish language used by the Ottomans was distinct from the spoken language of the general populace. Ottoman Turkish, heavily influenced by Persian and Arabic, was highly stylized and complex, rendering it inaccessible to the common people, even among native Turkish speakers. This bureaucratic language was a barrier to wider linguistic adoption, as its esoteric vocabulary and structure made it challenging for ordinary citizens to learn. In addition, Ottoman Turkish was primarily confined to the elite scholars and administrative officials, which limited its reach. In this context, Turkish never truly became a national language that resonated across social classes as Latin once did in medieval Europe. Instead, it remained the language of the ruling elite with little effort to simplify or popularize it among the broader population. The Ottoman Empire's pragmatic governance further contributed to the retention of local languages. Local administrators often used regional languages in daily interactions, preferring familiarity over uniformity. In the Balkan regions, Greek, Serbian, Bulgarian, and Albanian remained prominent in both social and administrative contexts. Similarly, Arabic continued to dominate in the Arab provinces. By allowing local languages to function alongside Turkish, the Ottomans avoided alienating their subjects. In their eyes, enforcing Turkish was an unnecessary measure when local languages were adequate for ensuring loyalty and maintaining the administrative structure. This flexibility provided stability and minimized resistance, but ultimately prevented Turkish from becoming a unifying language across the empire. The Ottomans faced challenges in establishing a unified educational system, which could have served as a mechanism for spreading Turkish. Due to the Millet System, each religious community operated its schools, where Turkish was rarely a focus. Greek Orthodox schools, Armenian institutions, and Jewish academies all emphasized their respective languages and cultural heritages, preserving linguistic diversity. While there were Ottoman state schools, they were limited in number and primarily intended for the training of administrators and military personnel. Furthermore, a lack of standardized Turkish textbooks and language materials hindered the development of a cohesive educational curriculum across the empire. Without a unified education system promoting Turkish, the empire missed an opportunity to instill the language in future generations. Religion played a significant role in language retention, especially within non-Muslim communities. Greek was closely tied to Orthodox Christianity, Armenian to the Armenian Apostolic Church, and Hebrew to Judaism. Even within the Muslim community, Arabic held special significance as the language of the Quran, religious scholarship, and Islamic law. The Ottomans respected this linguistic religious bond, especially since Ottoman identity was deeply intertwined with Islam. Enforcing Turkish would have risked cultural and religious tension. Consequently, even non-Arab Muslims in Arab regions continued to use Arabic in religious and cultural contexts, which weakened any impetus to adopt Turkish more widely. Despite the barriers, there were moments when the Ottomans attempted to encourage Turkish usage, particularly in the later centuries when nationalist movements began to threaten the empire's unity. Recognizing the potential of a shared language as a unifying tool, Sultan Mahmud II, and later Sultan Abdulhamid II, promoted Turkish as a means to strengthen Ottoman identity. Administrative reforms included attempts to increase the presence of Turkish in provincial schools and encourage the use of Turkish in official documentation. However, these efforts were often met with limited success due to resistance from local elites who saw Turkish as an encroachment on their cultural heritage. The rise of nationalism across Europe and the Middle East introduced a new obstacle to spreading Turkish. By the 19th century, ethnic and national identities became more pronounced within the empire, particularly in the Balkans, where Serbian, Bulgarian, and Greek national movements emphasized their own languages as symbols of identity and resistance. For many ethnic groups, adopting Turkish would have signified a loss of cultural autonomy. In response, they strengthened their linguistic traditions, even establishing printing presses, newspapers, and schools in their languages. Thus, nationalism undermined the Ottomans' late-stage efforts to promote Turkish as linguistic unity became increasingly impossible. The failure to establish Turkish as a dominant language left a legacy of linguistic diversity in former Ottoman lands. When the empire dissolved, newly independent states like Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Lebanon revived and emphasized their native languages as markers of national identity. Turkish, which had once been the language of an empire, quickly lost its administrative and cultural prominence. In some cases, former Ottoman subjects actively purged Turkish words from their languages as a means of distancing themselves from Ottoman influence. This linguistic diversity is a testament to the Ottomans' non-assimilative approach, where language was managed flexibly rather than imposed rigidly. One of the significant reasons Turkish failed to spread widely in the Ottoman Empire was the stark difference between the language used in the Ottoman palace and that spoken by ordinary citizens. The language of the Ottoman palace was a sophisticated mix, heavily influenced by Persian and Arabic. This palace language was ornate, filled with complex vocabulary and poetic expressions that made it almost a separate dialect inaccessible to the majority of the population. By contrast, ordinary Ottoman citizens spoke a more straightforward form of Turkish free from the heavy foreign influences that characterized palace speech. This linguistic gap meant that while the empire's elites and intellectuals operated in Ottoman Turkish, the general populace found it difficult to understand or relate to it. The lack of a standardized common Turkish language widened the cultural divide and limited the reach of the language beyond the confines of the palace, further impeding any efforts to unify the empire under a single linguistic identity. For example, while the poetry of a 13th-century Turkish poet can be easily understood by the common people of today's Turkey, the 19th-century Ottoman palace language is very difficult to understand. The Ottoman Empire's failure to spread the Turkish language was not merely a matter of policy oversight, but a reflection of its unique governance model, rooted in tolerance and pragmatism. The empire's reliance on the Millet System, its complex and inaccessible administrative Turkish, and the use of local languages in governance created an environment where linguistic diversity flourished. Attempts to promote Turkish in later centuries, though well-intentioned, were too little and too late, as the rise of nationalism and entrenched cultural identities overshadowed these efforts. Today, this linguistic diversity remains one of the Ottoman Empire's most enduring legacies, offering a historical example of how language identity and governance intersect in complex and often unpredictable ways.